Hello, 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 and welcome to Finishing the Year Strong. Ideas to boost student engagement. I am all about this one. So, who am I? You may say, hi. I'm Dr. Desiree Alexander. I'm the founder CEO of Educator Alexander Consulting, and I am hosting this webinar. Hello, everybody. What do we have coming up in May 11th? So we have a couple of Saturdays that we won't have a webinar, but on May 11th, we have Ready, Set, Record, getting started with video production projects in elementary school. And the thing that I love about education is even if you're not an elementary school teacher, you can always come and modify, right? We are the queens and kings of modification. So then we have ISTE in June. So in June, these are the sessions so far that I have for ISTE, but it always grows the closer we get to it. So come check me out at ISTE. Then July 13th, we have library collaboration, leadership, and mentoring. We have whole book approach with picture books. So how do you use picture books? I know when I was teaching middle school and high school, I used picture books all the time to connect to content. So how do you do that whole book approach with picture books? And then we have Level Up, Career Moves in Librarianship on October 5th. And then we always have our self-paced classes. So we have SLLA test prep, we have Google certification, always have support time where you can come and talk to me. So we always have those self-paced classes. And then tell me what you want to learn or tell me what you want to present. So if you want to present something or if you want to learn something, fill out that form and let me know. We have about 3 or 4 webinars being planned right now because we're going to wrap up in May and then we're going to start planning for the summer and the fall. We have a couple right now for the summer and the fall, but we are, about to go full-fledged scheduling for the summer and the fall. So definitely let me know what you want to learn and what you may want to present. Whew, all right. It's that time. We have Rachelle back with us. She is definitely family of EA webinars. She presents a lot of different topics for us and with us. So I cannot wait to learn how to finish the year strong, focusing on student engagement.
I'm just smiling because I always enjoy listening to you. And I tell you this every time, how you start. It's just so exciting and all that you offer and seeing all the things that are coming up. It's great. So I'm thankful for you for being able to do things like this and also to learn from all of the great webinars and other presenters that you've had and that are coming up too. So thanks to everybody for joining in. If you didn't see it in the chat, it's going to be on the screen as well, but I have a survey. And if you've been in any webinars that I've done before, you know that Rachelle likes her surveys because I look at it in real time on my phone. And just to make sure, that what I'm sharing is something that, perhaps you've never seen before. It's something that's new and I can kind of navigate it a little bit better. So we're going to see if I picked the right screen. I think I did. I think you can probably see ideas to boost student engagement. I hope, fingers crossed.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So the link to the survey is also on the screen. And so today's session is going to be a little bit different. It's a mix of ideas because I decided a long time ago at the end of the school year, things are kind of hectic, right? There's testing, there's activities, there's academic, like awards banquet, there's all these different things. And I always thought that it was a really great time to try a new idea because at the end of the year, what have you got to lose? And then you see how it goes. You have the summer to kind of think about it, reflect on it, maybe learn a little more about it, get some feedback also. And then if it worked well, great, you can come back in the next school year and try it. And if it didn't, maybe you can think about a new way to go about it. So I'm all about new ideas, especially as the school year potentially winds down, because I know we're all in different school systems. Other things, you can connect with me in a lot of different spaces. My information is in the document of resources that has been shared with you. I also had a recent newsletter that came out, and I encourage you to subscribe. I put 2 newsletters out a month, and I really just tried to streamline and share some free learning activities, some new resources to check out, just to make it easier to navigate out of all the tools. So real quickly about myself. So I teach full time, I consult full time, I teach Spanish, I have taught French, I'm also a STEAM teacher. And in that course, I cover a lot of topics, some of which we will cover here today, like artificial intelligence, augmented and virtual reality, coding, digital citizenship is something else. And I also really spend a lot of time teaching students how to properly send emails to their teachers, because that is also very important. My favorite thing I should say is I really like sharing ideas with other educators, taking some risks in my classroom, which is not something that I always did, but I have become better at because of the students, those of which that you see in the bottom image on the screen. They kind of challenged me about 9 years ago, like, why can't we do this? And let's try this. And I thought, yeah, I don't know why we can't try that. So I hope that I can share some ideas with you. I want to get some ideas from you as well. And so I have some responses coming into my survey, so I do appreciate it. They're not all required. And if you do provide your email address, I promise not to spam you. But I do have a giveaway today, courtesy of one of the tools that I'm going to share with you. So you can kind of work on that as we go. So diving into the topic, uh, curious, does anybody know what movie this image actually came from? Anybody can name it, just curious in the chat. But I found this and it made me laugh a lot because I am a huge fan of the movie that this image is from. But I also was really wrong about student engagement. All right, got it. Princess Bride. Yeah. And I kept talking about it years ago, like doing some games in class. And I didn't understand. I thought, oh yeah, the students are engaged in learning. But when I'm doing some different giveaways, I just read a giveaway on the chat. When I'm doing some different games and some activities in class, and then I am looking at their assessments, there was a complete disconnect. And I couldn't understand why they weren't doing well when it seemed like they were engaged. But I didn't actually know what that word meant. So I did an independent study when I got my master's, focusing on student engagement and learning about, what it means, what it might look like, why it matters, and all of those things. And so when I found this meme online, I just kind of thought it was funny. So here's a question for you. In this picture, looking at it, would you say, and you could type in the chat I really have you multitasking, doing my survey and typing in the chat. But when you look at the students, would you say that they are engaged in learning? And not necessarily every single one, but if you looked at that class, would you say, yep, that's student engagement? Curious as to your responses. I've asked this question, I've used this slide a lot over the last couple of years, and focusing on, is it a culture for learning? All right, so I got a nope. I would say not. I don't know how many people have ever sat in a classroom like that at some point, very uncomfortable chairs, although I didn't mind the space. But if you look at them, like a lot of no's coming in. And that's what I thought too. I looked at it and I thought, yeah, they look like they're bored. The one kid in the second row on the right in the third seat, he kind of looks like he's asleep. One kid, I don't know what he's looking at. But then I thought, well, maybe they are. Maybe some of them really are. They're processing the information, like they're really connecting with it. They're thinking about it at a different, like a deeper level. And so that's when I realized, like, student engagement looks different on everybody. It doesn't look one same way. And we have to try different things in our classroom, because what works for one student to get them really engaged in learning is not going to work for all students. And I know we've all experienced that in my STEAM class, especially when I first started to teach about augmented and virtual reality. And I was so excited. And some of the kids were like, that's boring. We've been doing that. We know all about that. But then I had a lot of students that were really excited about it. And I had one student, and I've told this story so many times, but when they were in eighth grade, everything that I did for that whole year, for the first 6.5 months, like we're talking coding, artificial intelligence, working with some robots, I had some drones, you name it, he hated every single thing. And I knew that because he told me that he hated every single thing. And when I got to augmented virtual reality with one of these tools that I'm going to share with you, it was like game changer. And they spent the whole weekend like creating projects in that. And that was the one thing that really engaged them in learning. And then fast forward to graduation, now they're like learning and going to coding. And it's like, who knew? Who could see that coming? And so in that picture, I just like to share that. And if anybody's curious about that date that's at the bottom, which does that seem that far in the future? I mean, time is kind of flying by, but that date, if you take the average amount of time that students in grades K through 12 spend sitting in classrooms, it's around 11,700 hours. That boils down to about 487.5 days. So imagine that where you are right now, you cannot move until that date. So you might be thinking, I wish I would have grabbed that cup of coffee or picked a better chair, like all these different things. So that's why students need to be more active and up and moving around with different experiences in learning that we create for them. And so it's just a fun fact. I did not do the research to find that out. That actually came from a book, Learning Transformed, that was written by Tom Murray and Eric Scheninger. And so I always share that just to give the perspective of like why it's okay to get kids up and moving. Because for years I was afraid that it was going to be too noisy and it wouldn't look like I was teaching. So it's just kind of a fun thing. So for today, I think about strategies that we can use for student engagement. And the reason that I kind of shifted to thinking about strategies is because digital tools and the types of technology that we've grown to like really enjoy using and we rely on, they don't always last. They don't always stick around. Some of the functionalities change. We can't use them in our schools, or they just all of a sudden disappear. And it happens a lot. And so not always focusing on the tool, but thinking about a strategy first that you might use in your classroom. And especially because 4 years ago, we were not in our classrooms and we had to think about like, how do I do this teaching thing now? So thinking about strategies that will work regardless of if you are in your classroom, virtual learning, hybrid learning, you're working, global connections and collaborations. So it doesn't matter where your students are, you can work with another classroom. That's something that's beneficial for all grade levels and content areas. And I think that's important also because here you are on a weekend and you're learning and you might get an idea and you might think, oh, but that won't work with my colleagues that teach in this level. And so I try to give some strategies that will work for anybody, but that just might require a little bit of kind of like a tweak in some way. And then I always think about social emotional learning and getting kids to really build relationships to prepare themselves for the future. Because looking at, the essential skills they need, we've been talking about the creativity and collaboration and communication, teamwork, resilience, and looking at the World Economic Forum's job skills outlook. Those are still there, the skills that employers want. But interestingly, the outlook for 2027 is not that different from the most recent one. But number 3 on that list is now artificial intelligence and big data. And so that's why I'm going to be throwing in some different ideas on all of these topics. And I'm going to show you some demos, and I encourage you and thank you for the responses to my survey. I appreciate that. It's very helpful. I encourage you with some of the different tools that I'll share with you, create an account, or if it's something that you think, yeah, this looks really interesting, I can do a lot of things with this, open up a tab so that you go back to it later. But hopefully in our time here together today, you can create something or a couple of things that will work for you, or you'll at least have some new ideas to explore that maybe you thought about, but you didn't realize, oh, I could use this tool for that. So first method, learning stations. And I'm curious in the chat, have you used learning stations? And I ask this sometimes in my surveys just to get an idea, because then usually I ask people, well, how did it go for you the first time? Or what were some of the challenges? So if you have used learning stations in your classroom, I'd be curious to know. So if you want to type a Y or an N, that would be great too. But for me, the reason I did this, and I was not an expert by any means, I did not read Dr. Catlin Tucker's book, and this is not a setup, but like oh, it just disappeared. Here we go. Wait, it's here. There we go. With the screen behind me. I have her work, a couple of her books, but I had never read Blended Learning in Action. So in my classroom, the relationships were not all that great. The students, they didn't really get to connect with each other. I didn't feel like I could really work and interact with each student. And so one day I decided that, I don't really like the look of my room. It was rows of desks, a lot of desks. And if students in the back of the class had questions, they were in some cases uncomfortable asking in front of their classmates. If they needed help, I couldn't get to them quickly. And they were sitting next to the same person. So they really didn't have a lot of opportunities to kind of interact with each other. So I looked at my room one morning in September. And as you can see from the pictures, the desks are, they're not the smallest desks, so the chairs are connected, the slider desks. And I just pushed them all around, however I could fit them with groups of 2, 3, 4. I just hurried up and did it, let my students stand outside in the hall. And then they came in and they said, like, what is going on in this room? What happened? And I said, I rearranged the desks. They said, into what? I said, well, they're called stations and we're going to do something different. And they said, where do we sit? I said, wherever you want. What are we going to do? I said, did not get that far yet. So what I then did is I came up with a quick activity. I think at the time I put a game of Kahoot on the board just to give me a few minutes to think through it, because it was a last minute decision. But then I worked through it and I thought about the activities that I would have students do in a normal class. So we might do a game of Kahoot or quizzes or one of those many other tools out there. I might spend 5 or 10 minutes explaining something. In my case, maybe a verb, maybe some new vocabulary, or asking them questions. I might show a short video. Maybe there's an activity in the book or a worksheet. So I have all of these different things. I have flashcards. So I just gathered some different things and I went around to each group and I said, all right, here you go. And you got 10 minutes and then we're going to rotate. And so it was a little bit messy the first couple of times we did this, but it got better. And it's not all about the technology. And you can see in my room, like, it's a little bit of a mess when this happened, but I really felt like I was getting to teach and I knew where each student was in their learning process every single day. I got to know them better. They got to know each other better. And in some cases, it was fun because I ran out of ideas because one class was so large. So I just grabbed materials and dumped markers and pencils and cards and everything on the desk. And I said, all right, you come up with something that's going to be a way to practice this. But what happened is students came to me, and I'm the only Spanish teacher, and they said, I really like Spanish a lot better this year than I did last year. And I said, well, why? And I tried not to be offended by that statement, but I said, what's the reason? They said, because we're not all doing everything at the same time. If I finish earlier, I'm not just sitting here waiting. If I need help, I feel more comfortable asking for it. We're doing a variety of activities and I feel more connected to my classmates. And then a little bit later on, some of the students said, I feel like this is a learning family. And I was like, wow, that's a big statement for a student who was at the time was in 10th grade to say that and to feel connected. So it really did make a difference. And they were excited. Like I noticed they stopped looking at the clock, other than when I would use classroom screen or something on the front board to kind of keep time before they rotated. And there were hiccups in it, of course, as with anything that you try that's new. And my biggest fear was, would they be on task? Would they be socializing too much? Would, administrators think that I wasn't teaching? There were lots of concerns, but it worked out really well. And I did have a talk with Dr. Catlin Tucker. I was on her podcast a couple of years ago about finding balance in your life, which was very ironic for me at the time. But I had told her that I did this and I had done it without reading her book. And I said, I wish I'd read your book. And she said, the way you did it is fine. You figured it out on your own. What works for one person is not necessarily going to work for the other person. And the best thing about this is if you are in person in your classroom and then you shift to virtual or to hybrid, she has on her site how you can do that. But we all know there's different tools available. So we meet in Zoom. You use breakout rooms. The kids can look at some external, like a Padlet, Google Jamboard, not anymore, but you could post those activities, Wakelet in a variety of spaces, and then you could pop through the different rooms. Easy to do. You just think about the method, and then if you can't do it in place, what are the tools to facilitate that method? So it did boost their engagement and learning. They were excited to get to work with different classmates. So that is one method. Project-based learning, again, something else that I was super wrong about. And I thought that I had been doing that for years. But what I realized is I was doing learning based on projects, very linear, like introduce the new topic, the new unit. Here are some activities, here's some assessments, project done. And I even wrote a blog about that a couple of years ago, probably 7 years ago. Somebody, maybe even 8, somebody asked me to write a blog about project-based learning. They said, "Do you do project-based learning?" I said, "Yeah, it doesn't everybody?" Not knowing that I had not a clue about authentic project-based learning. And so I wrote the blog, and then I dove into learning what it is and how it's different. And when I went back and read that blog, I was so embarrassed. I thought, I can't believe that I wrote this blog about something that I knew nothing about. So we're all learning as we go, and just we make mistakes, and it's a good model for students. So when I did this, the reason I tried this was because I really wanted my students to connect with other students in Spanish-speaking countries. I wanted to build their global awareness. I wanted them to have more independence in learning. And so I sat down, I read a couple of books, Launch by A.J. Giuliani and John Spencer, Genius Hour by Don Wettrick. I read some Genius Hour books by Andy McNair, and then some from ISTE. And I set the students down and I explained to them, I always explain to them why I'm trying a certain method or a tool, and then I get the feedback. But I said, here is what makes project-based learning different, and here's how we're going to do it. And I asked them, do you want to work on this for 2 weeks, 1 day a week, and then at the end of the 9 weeks, present? How do you want to go about this? And of course, they picked that Fridays would be PBL days. And then as we evolved throughout the year, we added on different tools. And so initially, when Edmodo was still around, that's how I made the connection with a school in Argentina and one in Spain. And so I set up a classroom. My students and their students just had conversations. They were practicing the language skills. And then they were able to ask questions specific to those students to get a very authentic first-person experience based on what they were studying. We also focused on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And my students are involved in some different activities where they're really focused on community service and volunteering, looking at global issues. Some of them are in the Model United Nations group at our school. And so focusing on some of these goals really built that global awareness for them and cultural awareness. So we had Edmodo, then we added on Flip, and they made videos. And when they got to see the students that they had just been writing with and building those connections with, it took it to another level. And then as they did their presentations, some students really just did a project. They weren't personally invested in it. They weren't engaged in it. It was just very like they were reading from the screen. I did have some students, the Padlet that you see on the bottom right. This is a student who really did not speak up a lot in class and lacked confidence. Very, very young student. Of course, the date on that is 2017. And I can tell you that she's actually getting married next weekend, which I've known her since she was in 8th grade. And so it's unbelievable that I had her all through high school, and she's gone through college and has been working for a year. But she just decided to use Padlet, and her topic was tolerance. And she was very interested in how like social, cultural, religious tolerance is, different in Spanish-speaking countries compared with the United States. And so she asked those students questions, and then she recorded videos of her, like, what did she think initially? What did she find out? What was she thinking now? And then a final reflective part of it. And when she spoke and presented, all she did is she had that Padlet on the screen and she just talked, and like no notes, nothing. And she was so invested in it and motivated by it. And other students said they had never had such a learning experience where they really got to feel like they were talking. I mean, they were talking to them one-on-one, but it was unlike anything else they had experienced. And this particular student here in the picture even said that that was the first time in her school career that she didn't care about a grade. And she said, I don't care if I get an F on this. And I said, well, you're not actually going to get an F on this. She said, but the thing is, I don't care, because what I learned and how I learned it and the way I feel now, it doesn't matter. I'm just excited about this and I'm inspired by it. And I want to just keep going to see what else I can learn and how I can help others to learn about this as well. And I thought, wow, like That was amazing. And then when those students were modeling that for their classmates, it helped them and they served as good role models. And so PBL, I can tell you in looking at the survey as well, I always ask about, your role in education because I want to give some specific examples. And if you share any other information like that, but I have seen some really great collaborations between grade levels, especially elementary teachers. It's hard to find the time when you cover so many things. But I have seen groups that have been second, third, fourth grade, fourth, fifth, sixth, where each grade is responsible for, creating, marketing, advertising a product, selling a product, and then they use the funds to make a donation, and they learn about somebody, a school, an organization that is in need, and they focus on that. And so it's really neat to do, or cross-curricular if you have, I did one with my STEAM course and the science teacher. And so I think that is a great option. And again, if you are not in person in class, you can do that virtually. You just find the tool to facilitate how they're going to share their learning. And of course, we know there are a lot of tools out there. You just find the one that offers a lot and that all students have access to. So that's another method. And here's another fun one, because student engagement and active learning. Anybody ever do scavenger hunts with your students? And I could say, there are other things too, like digital breakouts and escape rooms, those types of things that are really active, that help students to build a lot of different skills. They got to communicate, collaborate, they got to do the problem solving. But with scavenger hunts, you can do them on paper, not a problem. I have a friend that used a paper form for scavenger hunt over the holidays a couple of years ago. And I even said to her, did you use an app? Because that probably took a really long time. And she said, is there an app for that? And I thought, there's probably an app for that. And there is. That's when I found Goose Chase. I think that was probably 7 years ago now. So if you think about scavenger hunts, it gets students up and moving. You can use Flip. It's a free tool. It has immersive readers. If you're looking at accessibility, they can record. I used Goose Chase, which is on the left. So you can see some students with the video and some different challenges. And that was really great at the end of the year. And that was the first time I used that. It took me the whole year to make it for each of my classes, and I wanted them to review for the final exams. So I gave them some different tasks that were relevant to the content that they needed to review. And so they were up and moving around the classroom, the school, causing a bunch of chaos, I'm sure, but they were really engaged in learning. And it was better, they said, than sitting down and doing like review sheets or something like that, especially after that year. It was a rough testing season that preceded that. So that's something fun. And besides the fun part, it's helping them to build all of those essential skills that they need. They're working as part of a team and collaborating, and they're problem solving, and they're being creative with what they're doing or what they're finding. And depending on what you have them find out, some of those tasks can involve learning about other cultures and developing that global awareness. So then they're developing empathy also. And I think it's just a lot of fun. So if you think about a scavenger hunt, then paper, great. Or if you find one of the digital tools to use, especially ones that are free or have different features for accessibility, or that you can capture those moments, it's a lot of fun for you and for them. And so I like to start with some methods. All right, so here we go with a little bit of a mix of some things. So CoSpaces, and I'm looking at my survey, so thank you. And only one person had said that they have heard of CoSpaces, but nobody else had answered that. So I'm going to tell you about, and then I'll show you kind of what it is. You can use this with any grade level. It is augmented and virtual reality. And the students can create, and I'm trying to grab my merge cube here without knocking everything over, but the middle picture has the merge cube. And if you've ever seen the merge cube, it has the different sides, and there's different apps that you can use and kind of interact with it. With CoSpaces, students can actually create, let's say they read a book, or they read about something in one of their other classes, and they can make kind of an interactive, story where somebody who's reading it has to make the decision and rotate the cube in a certain way to go through the story. Or they retell it, or maybe they, extend the story and tell something like what happens next, like a prediction. There's lots of different examples available for different subject areas available on the CoSpaces site. And in that document, I have promo codes. I have two actually. The one that has, I think it has 24 at the end of it. That is the newer one. This one would still work, but the newer one also gives you access to create on the Merge Cube. And so you can use it again, any level of learner. But if you're thinking, I'm an elementary teacher, I don't have a lot of time to bring this in, you can even just have students kind of explore and see what it does. So let me minimize this screen here, and I'm going to slide this one over and go to my CoSpaces. And so if you go to CoSpaces, when you log in, if you would create an account, what I have my students do is I have them go to the gallery. And in the gallery, you can see they have STEM and coding, they have social sciences, language and literature, makerspace, and arts. And because I'm logged in, I can see something that if you're not logged in, you won't necessarily see. And what I mean by that is there are little pluses on some of these projects. You can tell if it was made by the CoSpaces team. And if you open it up and check it out, like you can tell if it was made by a student as an example also. But when it has the plus, you can remix it. And so if you're thinking, this looks great, because there are teachers who have used this to create assessments for students. There are games, there are parkour games, there are mystery games. There's a lot of different things in here. Some of these also have are used on the Merge Cube, like this one right here, which is the interactive ecosystem. So if I click on this one, it'll load, and as it loads, it shows you like all the different layers, and it tells you, you have to have the Merge Cube for it, but this is what it looks like. And it says it was created for the Merge Cube, open it on your phone or tablet. So hypothetically, if I open the app on my phone, and as I would rotate on it, I would be able to see different things depending on what I clicked. And it's kind of hard to do right now because, again, I don't have the Merge Cube. Whoops, I didn't mean to click that. But students or you could rotate it, and then they see all of these different things popping up on the sides of it. Now, to create, if you go back to the gallery, and let's say that you find, and this is something that I love doing, is when I'm teaching my students about coding, because with CoSpaces, you can do very simple things like just have the characters, you can animate them, or you can actually go and code so they move across the screen, they approach each other. If it's a game, it's a snowball fight or something, I will go into the code and I will change some of the things. So in one like this, they had horses that were moving and some soldiers. And then I went through and I made the horses go like really fast in the opposite direction. And I turned the soldiers upside down, and I detached the person that was riding the horse from the horse. And I wanted the students to go in and find like, where was the code messed up at? And so they had to do it. Now, something like this, if you click on the question, it tells you the definition. And so that's something, it can be used as an instructional material. And again, it can be something that's remixed if you have that option. So you as a teacher, if you teach something about this, like you're walking inside a Roman house and you wanted to add extra characters or extra information, you don't have to start from scratch. And you can see 580,000 plus views of this and 4,400 remixes. And so it's easy to kind of dive into that. Now, for me, as a teacher, you can have different students, like classes, and you can see everything that they can create. You can create assignments for them. And then I have some different projects. And one thing that I like a lot of things about CoSpaces, but at the beginning of the year, especially for building relationships, they have a template that is about me. So if you want to teach students about augmented virtual reality, and you also want to get to learn about them and them to get to learn about each other, you can use that template. And so when I load this all about me, and again, thank you for doing the survey. There is still plenty of time. This is what it looks like in edit mode. And so just to show you, it's pretty easy to navigate. Over on the left side is where my scenes are, which if you equate it to, say, Google Slides, for example, or PowerPoint, the slides would be over here. So if I wanted to add a new scene, I would click New Scene. and I could choose. Now, maybe the next scene, I want the roller coaster template, or I want an escape room template. It doesn't matter. Or maybe I just want an empty scene. So I'm going to put an empty scene in there. And thank you, Dr. Desiree, for putting that link in there. So then on the bottom, you have a library of a lot of things. And one thing I can say about this is over the years, and I've been using this for many, many years, they've continued to add new features, new characters, new items, objects, backgrounds, everything. Students can record their voice and upload that audio into it. Images, you can do that as well, except it kind of pixelates them. But let's say that I want to add this character on, and then it kind of like guides you through it. And the students learn really quickly. So if you feel like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to figure this out in a lot, like without it being a long time, you don't have to. You just need to know what it does and then give them a chance to explore. And that's how I start. I have them look at the gallery, play some of the games, check out to see what the other students or other teachers have created just to get some ideas. And so I'm going to make this character larger and slide the character over. And we know that, when you see the 3 dots, the 3 bars, or the right click, always the things that got to check those out. So when I right click, I have some different things. So right now it's named Casual Boy. So I could change the name. I could put in a speech bubble, but I can also animate the characters. And there's reactions. So I could have clapping. There are postures, be kneeling. And then there are some actions. My favorite is the shy dancing. So you can give kind of like an activity, and then material, you can change the color of shirt, pants, skin, hair, and eyes. And you can even customize the color. So maybe I want them to have on a purple shirt. I'm going to change the pants to be, this blue color just for fun. And we're going to change to like green eyes. And then let's say I want to add an animal. Everybody knows I love cats, also raccoons. So I'm going to put the cat there. And same thing, you right click, you can animate it. I'm going to have the cat running. And I don't know about you, but I kind of have always wanted also a purple cat. So we're going to make it a purple cat. And then if I put a deer on here, I'm going to show you what happens. So let's say that I want to put this mouse on this deer. I'm going to make the mouse a little bit bigger. Now, it might look like that mouse is on the deer. However, when you hit play and it kind of zooms out, so you see how it's animated, and the mouse is not on the deer. And there's a shy dancing. So what you have to do, and again, the kids figured this out, is if I right click and I hit the attach, these little blue dots light up. So maybe I want the mouse on his hand on the top of the cat. I think I'll put it on the top of the cat because the cat and the mouse. So now when I hit play and I zoom back out because where the camera was, there's the mouse on top of the cat. And you can create backgrounds. You can have text. Also, the coding aspect of it. They have CoBlocks, they have Python and TypeScript. And whenever you code, the students, they've been using, in most cases, some type of drag and drop coding. So it does not take them long to figure it out. But it is a ton of fun. And again, it can be used in any grade level. And I've even seen older students use it to create something to share with younger students to tell a story. And it can have multiple different scenes. So that's kind of neat as well. And so CoSpaces, again, there is a code that's in there for you to use with a promo, and you can add your face in, you can change anything about it, any of the colors. It is pretty easy to get started with. And the other thing that I'll say, coding is awesome. It is. And some of the students are really hesitant about it. And there is such a demand for skills in coding. I mean, AI is the #1 skill in demand. It's increasing in all these areas, of course, and STEM related skills, coding especially. And I have a lot of students that are hesitant to try coding because they think that they won't be good at it. They think it's not for them. And even last year with my 8th graders, I had 2 young girls who said that they didn't want to do it, that they didn't think that they would be able to do it, and that coding was not for girls. And that really made me sad on all levels because I didn't want them to doubt that they had the ability. I mean, sometimes it comes easy to people, and sometimes it is a struggle. But you have to, oh yeah, I absolutely can share that. You have to dive in and try it. And so flash forward a couple of months after the one student of mine said that, she said, I really hate this. And I said, I know, you told me. And she said, no, not for those reasons. I said, well, why? She said, I hate it because I really like it and I'm really good at it. And I said, oh, well, that's kind of interesting because you really didn't want to do it. And she is doing like really advanced coding right now. And anything that I bring in, if it's a robot, that requires a lot of setup and everything, she just wants to do that. And I have her in Spanish class this year now, but she just wants to go to that. And I think, if not given those opportunities. And so as to your question, yes, I love your comment. It scrolled down. Absolutely right, because the number of girls, and I even say to them, have you ever heard of Grace Hopper? Like, do you know Grace Hopper? And just start to tell stories about it. And when I was in eighth grade, which was a very last century, when computers came into the classrooms, I started doing some coding and I really enjoyed it. And now some of the coding that I do with them, I don't always know the answers and I don't have all of the time to learn it, even though I want to. But I want to make sure that I provide a variety of options for them. And CoSpaces, I like how they have the different choices. So it can be the code blocks where everything is there, or for students who want to take it to the next level and go to the Python. So the assignment, task, pacing, time, and rubric. With CoSpaces, what I like to do, especially in my STEAM class, and I did use this with my Spanish class because they confronted me and said, why don't we get to do the cool AR, VR stuff? And I just looked at them blankly and said, I didn't think about it. And that actually happened at a time when CoSpaces made that you could put students together on a team to collaborate. So that is a great way to get students to really work together, learn digital citizenship skills, but it depends on the assignment. So for me with my STEAM class, because the whole focus of it is I want them to learn about all of these different topics, artificial intelligence, coding, anything related to STEM, robotics. I want it to be a fun learning experience and not so much a focus on like the grade, even though the grades, they have to have a grade, but I want them to have time. And so typically what I do is I create a basic rubric that says, you're going to make a scene, you're going to tell a story, whatever the actual focus is, and you need to include X amount of characters, X amount of objects. You have to change the colors of some of the things. You have to change the background. There have to be some speech bubbles. I also ask them to put some animations, like I showed you with the postures, like the shy dancing. And I might say it needs to have 2 scenes or 3 scenes. And then my rubric for something like that is just, did they meet those requirements? And then if they have to code, because again, in my STEAM class, it's not so much focus on like it's all about coding. I want them to just get the experience, but I want them to be accountable for like following the requirements to put their project together and then to share it to see where they can improve. But also, in addition to that, and that was a great question, there are lesson plans and activities available on the CoSpaces site. So you can download them and it kind of has the pacing guide. Also, they have their own YouTube channel. And you can go and they have just the snippets because there are so many new features that have come out with it that, again, with all things, it can be difficult to keep up with. But if you go and you want to learn, like, how do I attach an object? There's a short demo video for that. And the team is really responsive. There's a group on Facebook, and you can reach out at any time. So I did the best to answer that question, but that's what works for me. But depending on the age of your learners as well, what you put in, for me, it's more about, are they able to navigate through the platform and to add in the things that I want them to? Or did they just use the template, didn't change anything and turned it in? And then like they didn't build any skills because it was basically done for them. So that's how I handle it in my STEAM class. So thank you for asking the question. So that's CoSpaces and also Merge Cube, because with the Merge Cube, you can build this, use CoSpaces and build it on the Merge Cube. And so the items are attached. And then when you put the items on there, you actually do have to hit that little blue dot to see where you want to have it attached. And I have seen some really extensively created merge cube projects with CoSpaces. So it's a very neat thing to have kind of that hands-on learning. And besides that, if you do go to Merge Cube and actually use the Merge Cube, they have their own app with some different things that students can create, like looking at the solar system, looking at dissecting a frog, um, parts of, looking at lungs, and there's just a lot of options there. And students, if I would have had this when I had geometry, I would have done a lot better, or learning the order of the planets. They have some for like a volcano. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't think I could go and like hang out on the side of a volcano just waiting for it to erupt. But I could hold the merge cube and see what that looks like. And the layers of the earth, I can kind of take it apart and you can see it in your space. It's really, really neat. And you're exactly right. They're learning skills, and it almost feels like a game. And the other thing too is there is, and I put this in the document, I believe, and if not, I'll make sure it's there. But accessing these, there was a time they were $1, but you can print them, and you print them, and there's like directions to cut them out to make a little small one as well. So if you're looking at, the accessibility and the funding for resources, trying out some of these things with the free promo code, for example, and then also, let me go back to my slideshow here, and then also downloading the paper. And there is a trial for teachers. They have like Merge EDU. So it's a lot of fun to see what the kids come up with that. So, all right, game-based learning. Definitely boost some student engagement. And I'm curious, and I'm looking at my survey now just to see, and I have a couple of responses, but there are a lot of game-based learning tools out there. And Kahoot has been around the longest. Quizlet also. We play Quizlet live on a bus. I keep that picture in there. It's from probably 7 years ago at this point. And the students were sitting on the bus, and it was the small bus because it was not a big group. I was taking them across the state of Pennsylvania to Harrisburg to participate in a technology showcase for students. And they were just not even talking to each other. 30 minutes in, are we there yet? And I said, well, let's play a game. And the nice thing about Quizlet Live was that you don't need that screen to project. So I picked for them 50s and 60s TV trivia, knowing that there was probably very little chance that any of those kids would have a clue about some of those, but it would require them to talk and to think and to communicate. And so we played that game on the bus going across the state. And it was just funny hearing them yell out the names of these shows, but then like learning about them. And then from that point on, we played, I don't know, 8 or 10 games, not all. I think we did 50, 60s TV trivia, and then I picked something else. But then after that, they were talking. Like the ninth graders were talking to the seniors. They moved seats. The headphones weren't on. They were communicating, and it was great. And the same thing in the classroom. Games, it doesn't have to involve technology. The hands-on games, the ones that students create. I know a lot of teachers will have their students in their class create a game and, make a board game. And that really helps them to learn the content because they're creating something. So it's more authentic and meaningful for them and purposeful, of course. And then it can be used also with other students in other classes. And so when kids see that we value their work, that also, I do believe, helps with engagement. Now, at the end of the year, like my students every day, are we playing a game? Are we playing a game? And I don't necessarily want to play a game every day, but there are, of course, the benefits to it because depending on the game that we choose, we get that feedback, especially with some of the ones now that have the AI within them, then the students are getting the practice that they need because the AI can track how they're doing, where they're making mistakes, the time it's taking them to answer, and then it can give them extra practice that's targeted to what they need. And a student of mine, we use one of these tools where they interact and they have a virtual assistant, a chatbot. I actually wrote an article about this in AI literacy, and he said, having this chatbot work with me, it gets me to where I need to be in the language. And so giving them opportunities, whether it's through games, collaborating, and that engagement really goes a long way, especially if it's something fun that offers a variety of things for them. And so Blue-Kit, and I did have a game lined up, lots of options. So Blue-Kit, the GimKit, the Kahoot, and I don't necessarily want to take the time. Well, we could play a game of Look It if you've never played it because it is kind of fun. I could set like a 2-minute game. Does anybody want to play a quick game of middle school trivia with Look It if you've never played it? Just out of curiosity, you can type a yes or a no in the chat and we'll see. I'll pause there really briefly just to see if anybody is interested. Oh, I got a yes. It's always kind of fun, like a quick 2-minute. Let me go back here, minimize, and all right. I like those answers. I'm going to close out these extra tabs here. So I had it already set up just in case. But in the dashboard, you have different sets. It functions, and it was actually created like GimKit. It was created by a student. GimKit was created by a young man named Josh, who graduated high school in 2019. He created GimKit as a way to improve upon what Kahoot offered as part of project-based learning, and worked in a non-traditional high school that was affiliated with this high school. And he actually serves as a mentor for Ben, who is the creator of Look It, who probably has graduated now. I think he was attending Duke University. And so it functions in very much the same way as Kahoot because it's built upon the similar kind of, how they do it. Now there's different modes to play. My students really like Gold Quest. All the different options, some of them can be assigned for homework, but you click, you can have, and again, just in the interest of time, I'm just going to do a quick 2 minutes. I'm going to host. So if you want to play, you just go to play.lookit.com and students enter the code. They can also scan the QR code that's at the top left. Also, there are some other things that you can set, like in some of the games, there's like a skill level. In Battle Royale, like their strength. So if they miss questions, you can give them extra strength to start with. So then they last longer in the game. But some of them are based on strategy. There's one that's Deceptive Dinos. And so my students really like that one because it kind of reminds you of the Indiana Jones game. Or Indiana Jones movie, if you've ever seen that, the sound behind it, looking for something like lost treasure. So we got 2 players, and I'll just give it like 2 more. So we got 3 players. And if you are not playing, totally fine, because it would just be 2 minutes. And the nice thing about some of these is, and I'm going to hit start, and you can still get into the game. The code is up here on the right now. It shifts over. But the nice thing about this is when it comes to student engagement, you want students to get practice and practice. And sometimes they are like, why do we have to do this? Well, because we want you to learn. And you play a sport, you play an instrument, you are involved in some other activity. Do you have practice for that? Yes. Okay. Well, school, you have to practice. Sometimes that comes in the form of homework. Sometimes that comes in the form of, an activity in class. So now the game should be running, and hopefully, because it's not showing that anybody has any, oh, there we go. Okay. So the thing about this is, in this mode, you answer the questions and you see the question on your screen on your own device, and then things pop up where you can steal the gold. And with some games, that students who get all the answers right, who answer the fastest, are the ones that are always on the leaderboard or win. And then the students who take more time or know that they're not going to answer the fastest end up not wanting to play, or they lose their engagement in that. And it's like, the motivation is gone. With this game, and also with some others out there, GimKit has a mode too that it kind of like, goes back and forth. But you might be in first, and it's not always necessarily because you got the highest score. There's some strategy that's involved. You get to steal gold around the holidays. You steal toys around Halloween. It's candy, and it's fun because it goes back and forth. The students are all excited about it. You can kind of sabotage depending on which mode you play. Oh, there comes Breezy. But it's a quick start. You don't have to create from scratch. They have a library full of games. The only recommendation I have is to always check the accuracy. And I get the sound, and you can view the report. And probably nobody heard that, but it plays a tooting sound. But if I view the report, what I end up doing is I scroll past the leaderboard. I don't let the kids see that. And then I just go and I look and I see like, oh, I 1 out of 1. Some people didn't get the question. This one only had 29 questions in it, but everybody did really well. But then if let's say that, nobody knew the fastest animal on earth was the cheetah, and it was a 0 out of 2 or 0 out of 10, then I would clarify that in my class. But it's kind of fun. I mean, that one is it's kind of a ridiculous one that I put together and just grab some random trivia. But to create it, you can put your title and then you can search from a question bank. So if I do photosynthesis, which for some reason that's always my go-to, I can go in the question bank. And if I type in photosynthesis, it's going to give me some different questions, and I can just scroll through them like, oh, those are great. So I'm going to add all questions. So that's done. And I look at some other ones. But you want to see, because sometimes when they sort the answers, it might say photosynthesis requires all the following except, and your answers might be soil, sun, and then it might have true and false as 2 other options, because sometimes that's just how the answers get kind of configured. And so that makes it a little bit more obvious. I've had that happen where the answers have been like, which is like, what is the number 11 in Spanish? And there's only one number. And then the rest of them are like classroom objects, greetings, or something else. And so it's like, there's no real learning happening right there because it's so obvious, but you can create them really quickly. Or you can discover from their library, just search for any topic. And you can also see if it's teacher verified, how many plays. I mean, this must be a really good one because it's had almost 2 million plays. So that's Blue-Kit. Lots of fun, keeps the kids in the game, keeps them engaged because it's the back and forth. Like I'm in first, I'm in 10th, but it doesn't mean I'm in first because I got all the answers right. It's just the dynamics of the game, and that's why it was built that way. So kind of fun for that one. So I'm going to close out the Blue-Kit. And again, if you do have questions, let me know. But I'm going to go to a little bit of AI right now. And the reason that I'm choosing EduAid for this, and EduAid is, I try not to play favorites, but I do really like EduAid for a couple of reasons. One is that it has been created by 2 people, Thomas and Thomas, who are classroom educators and are still in the classroom. And so because of that, they know the types of things, the tasks that teachers have, the things that we create, especially also for administrators, and then in different areas, accessibility, looking on, the wellness of students, like checking in on them. And then all of the things that we have to create, or things such as writing letters of recommendation, designing a whole lesson, project-based learning, gamification, you name it, creating assessments. So they have all of these different things. They had 65 resources in the fall, and now they have well over 100, and they continue to add more. Also, I did an audit of all of their, what happens with the data and the information. Are they in compliance? And across the board, they met all of that. And coincidentally, they are also originally both from Pittsburgh, where I am. And so I really like this. And I will ask you one thing as kind of like a focus is, before I show you this, think about things in your classroom that take up a lot of your time. On average, they say teachers spend, around 55 hours a week between teaching, and like a good portion of that is just doing the clerical tasks that takes up most of that time, which means that we're not spending as much time with students and building relationships or working with our colleagues. And so that's when some of these tools come in handy. So if you think about whether or not you jot it down, you think about what takes up a lot of your time. And maybe you have in your mind 3, 4, 5 things. And now I'm going to show you EduAid. And if you go to EduAid and you create an account, the use of it, 15 generations per month are free. But the cost of it is only $5.99 a month. And if you pay ahead for an entire year, I think it's $50. So it is very robust. And I do have two books to give away from them as well, because they're just super supportive. But I'm going to show you what it looks like. And again, keep in mind like those things. So in the chat, anybody want to give me a topic that you're teaching, a topic and a grade level? The first one in is the first one I'm going to go with, because it's more fun, because otherwise Rachelle will pick photosynthesis. So something you're thinking, and like also when we teach, a lot of times you might think, oh, I have to teach that concept again, or what's a way I can really get the students excited about this learning? So if anybody has a topic that you want for me to show you in this, it can just be one word, it can be anything. I've had a lot of interesting ones over the years, but it's over the year, I should say, over the past year. I've been showing about AI for about 6 years. But if there's a pronouns, thank you. Okay, so first thing, they have subjects. So they recently added career and technical training, which I think is great. They have speech and language learning, that is something newer. And then this is available to use for preschool all the way through post-secondary. So I am going to select language arts, and I am going to pick third grade students for fun. And I'm going to type in here pronoun usage, and that's it. Now I'm going to hit enhance, and it's going to take a minute, the AI, and hey, you know what? That's exactly what I meant. Students will be able to correctly identify and use pronouns in sentences to replace nouns. So speaking of engagement, we have engagement activities, unit plans, and across the top here, they have all of these different types of resources. So you can scroll through if you want vocabulary, you want a slides outline, independent practice for students, cooperative learning. So again, engagement. So I was talking about learning stations earlier. So it can tell you what types of activities to create for learning stations. Project-based learning is there. So like I had mentioned before, think about a method, and then if you're not in person or if you need some assistance with that, what's a tool that can help you? This one is new, Compass conversation pieces, and then gamification. So again, student engagement, you have an escape room, this or that, Jeopardy style, and there's different questions. So for this one, I'm going to go back to planning, and I'm going to hit engagement. And then over here on the right side, it actually talks you through how to do what I'm doing, but you don't necessarily need that. But one other thing that I'll mention about this is they have the AI disclaimer, and it tells you what all AI tools should, is that, it should not be a substitute for the expertise and nuanced understanding of skilled educators. The content can be biased or hallucinate. Make sure that you adapt and tailor your AI generated lessons to meet the specific cultural and linguistic needs of your class. And so I like that they have that on there. So now I've got my topic or keyword, and I'm going to hit add to workspace. Now you'll see on the right side, which is my workspace, it will start to generate pronoun activities. Oh, pronoun hunt, matchup, pop quiz, relay race, charades, would you rather, deep question, riddles. Wow, that was really fast. Then it'll give you at the bottom some other suggestions. If I go, oh, bingo style, yes, please. So then it generates very quickly, and it gives you the call sheet questions. So you can say to your students, what word can be used to replace the noun boys in a sentence? And then they'd have a bingo board. The other thing is you can transform this. You can increase or decrease lexile. You can translate it. You can align it with standards, for example. So I have this as all in one workspace. And so maybe you sit down one day, and on that day, you're thinking about your plans for the whole week for one of your classes. And you use this and you think, okay, I want an engagement activity. Then I want some independent practice for them. So I want them to do a Mad Lib. All right, so I click Mad Lib, and then again, it's going to generate pronoun Mad Lib. So please remember to bring blank backpack to school every day. And then I want some gamification. So let's say maybe I want to do a this or that, or we had the bingo style already, word search. So I'm going to add the word search, and there it's putting some of the word search in. And again, it may not be perfect. You can always edit it. And then I can go back to something else for planning. I think, I probably need to do more, and I can do a unit plan. So I add that to the workspace. But again, with the student engagement, there's a lot of different options here. So here we go. We have the objectives, the activities, assessments, extension activities, and then they even give you some extra things at the bottom if you want a slides outline. So that's one thing. Another thing that they have is the assistant. So if you are thinking about your professional duties, here are some different things that you can use. You would, of course, want to change your topic or keyword and maybe start a new workspace because it would go into that same workspace. But they also have accessibility. So that's super important. So again, like I asked before, we're looking at student engagement, but there are all these other things available too. So like EduAid has things that you can use to boost student engagement in your classroom, but maybe also on your list, you're looking at, how to, create accommodations for your students. Also some wellness activities, digital citizenship lessons, icebreakers, those types of things, all built within this one space. And when I have shown this to people, educators at different, PD trainings and conferences, I ask them, like I did to you before, what are some things that take up a lot of your time? Jot those down. And then after we go through some of these different tools, see which one you can check the most off on your list. And that's the tool that you would start with because there are so many out there. And so it's just about the ideas. And so for you, if you look at this, and again, if you find that you like this or you see something that you could use, by all means, put that resource in or put it, if you're on Twitter or X, or even on LinkedIn, I would love to hear what you find to be very helpful with the EduAid. So that's AI. And then let me go to this other one that's kind of neat that perhaps you could actually use. It's not that one. Oh, there we go. Not that perhaps you could use. So quizzes. I wanted to mention quizzes AI because there are a couple of new things that it has added. And a lot of people have heard of quizzes, but maybe did not know that they changed some things over the past, during the school year. And so I call this like plan in seconds, not in weeks. So what you can do, and this can also boost some student engagement, is with quizzes, they have these AI enhancers. And you can find a quiz that's already been made and add to it. You can fix any grammatical or spelling errors that are in it. You can translate it to another language, whatever you need to do, especially if you're, your language learners, for example. But the fun things that I think make this really awesome are one that says, make it fun and add a thematic narrative. So what you can do is in your class, if you are teaching photosynthesis, it also real world scenarios too, because I did that with photosynthesis and I said, convert the questions. So then it made it more, instead of like photosynthesis is, and it had a definition, it had a scenario. Like imagine that you are outside of your house and you have plants, and then it had more to it. Or you can choose a famous person from history. You can choose a superhero if you want. And then it will take that theme, that person, whatever you give that, and add that into the questions. Or the make it fun, it'll just add in some humor to what the questions are. And that's all the AI enhancers. So with student engagement, reading the questions, kind of could be like, okay, that's great. I mean, it has the memes that pop up. And my students really like quizzes because there are the different ways to play. And I can turn off or on the memes and it's kind of fun for them. But the other thing that's new is they have accommodations. And so again, with students in some of these different tools that we use, like the game-based learning tools or the interactive lessons, for example, with quizzes or any of those other ones like Blokit, when students see, like, especially if it's projected, like I never have the leaderboard projected on the board for students to see. I usually like freeze the screen, like on the code, the join code, because I don't want students to feel like they're not going to finish in time or that they have to be very competitive. And sometimes they'll give up. And that's been my experience. And maybe it's been your experience as well. Well, now with quizzes, they have accommodation profiles. And what that means is whenever you create a class, if you're using quizzes, you create a class, and for your students, each individual student, you can have specific accommodations for them. And the best thing about that is when you launch the game, all the students see, and you wouldn't project it yet until you had that join code on there, because you would set it up, behind the scenes and then put the board on. But when the students get the game and they see the join code, all of the students join in. And I can actually show this to you as well. The students join in and nobody knows that somebody had less answer choices available to them. They don't know that the font size was bigger, that you enabled the dyslexia font, that somebody's not seeing the leaderboard. There's all of these different things that you can change. And so each student is getting what they need. And nobody knows that, compared to if you give a paper test, for example, and somebody has multiple choice and somebody has to write an essay, they see that and they may wonder, why am I getting something that's different? In this case, that doesn't happen. And so, let me minimize this. And I'm going to go back to my quizzes and I'll show you just what that looks like really quickly here. They do have the quizzes AI on the landing page and on the side. But if I go to my library, not a surprise, you'll see I had a photosynthesis quiz. But let's say that I want to pick a different one. So I'm going to pick my Realidades, and it has enable accommodations. And you can choose to have that on or off and get an explanation. So I'm going to hit start. And this also happens if you do the assign. Now, we know like students get excited for games and for something a little bit different. So let's say that I want to pick my Spanish 1 class or 2. It doesn't matter, but I'm going to use my STEAM class just because I made up this class and the year and the names. So in this class right now, I only have 3 students. And I have Annie, who has 4 accommodations, and her accommodations are dyslexia font, the sound effects are off, and I can change that. So let's say I want to remove Annie from that group, and now Annie's here. So if I click Annie, and I am going to decide to give her 30 extra seconds for questions, I'm going to give her a redemption question if she makes a mistake. She can have an extra attempt after she goes through it. I'm going to reduce the number from 4 down to 3. And then I'm also going to increase the font size and not show the leaderboard. So at the bottom, I have 6 options. I'm going to save changes. And then now it puts her into a group called Group Sapphire. If you have students that then have similar accommodations, it puts them into the same group. That stays the same. So now whenever I'm done, I hit done, that's when I would turn my board on and project when I hit start. So when I hit start and then my board is now on and displaying it, the students see this, you start, and again, they may tell each other, which we can always control, but as they're playing, they don't necessarily know that, like, maybe they think that there were only 3 answer choices to begin with, or they don't know that they have extra time because they're just playing the game. And every kid, like I said, is getting what they want. It's keeping them in the game because they have those accommodations set up for them. So that once you set them every time that you play that game, it's the same. But then maybe later on you see that they don't need the extra time or they don't need the redemption question. You can always change it. So those features are just newer in the last couple of weeks, probably about 3 weeks ago. So that's very, very exciting. And I want to share quizzes. And I have 2 more to share with you, and I'm kind of jumping around. So let me show you School AI, because based on my survey, and again, thank you for taking the time to do that. And if you didn't, you still can. Nobody had heard of School AI. And with School AI, and I'll actually go to a tab for it because it's a little bit easier and more visually engaging to see. Excuse me. So on School AI, they have some different features. And you can have students basically have a conversation with some famous person from history. They have these that are already created. You can create your own space for students to kind of interact with. And all of that is saved within your teacher dashboard. It does not collect student data other than, and I tell my students, just put in your initials. So if I go to Sidekick, I tell the Sidekick what I want the Sidekick to do. So I'm going to say, speak to students about fractions, and that's it. more options, describe the audience. Okay, students are in, I don't know, I'm going to say third grade, not sure. Learning about fraction. Oh, if I could type it right, I'm trying to do it fast. Help them, and whatever your prompt is, the better it's going to be for an experience with them. So help them understand, give examples, and I'll say be friendly and fun. And then how would you like to interact? I'm going to say friendly. And then students must respond related to the topic. For me as Spanish teacher, sometimes they try and give an answer in English and it will pull them back. So when I hit start preview, this is what the students would see. Hey, today we're going to explore fractions. They're like pieces of pizza. If you had a pizza and cut it into 4 equal slices, so it'll do that. Can you guess what fraction each slice would be? So I'm going to get this wrong. I'm going to put 1/8. And you could actually have it speak it to you by clicking on there. So then I've given it my answer and it's thinking, and it says, actually, if it's cut in, and it'll give you that. So then it'll give the students another one. Each experience that they have, each student will have a different experience, basically. And then whenever it's all said and done, like you can see the prior sessions that I ran. And with my students, I can see, it's kind of funny when it comes up, it says it's just getting started. And you see all of the different comments, you see the whole conversation, the questions that they ask, and some of these were teachers that were just getting started, engaging well, showing interest in AI applications. The other thing that you can do with this is they have different spaces. So there are ready to launch spaces available. So let's say you're teaching about science, and some of my friends have created spaces, or world history. There are lots of collections for younger students. And so again, if you're teaching elementary, you're teaching about famous authors. So maybe you taught about William Shakespeare, Maya Angelou. So if I say, you know what, I've always wanted to have a conversation, so I'm going to start the preview. And school AI will say, hello, this is my name, this is what I do. Did you know I was the first Black woman to have a screenplay produced? What drives your creativity and passion? And I could say, I like reading, and that's it. So then it'll give me some type of a response. That's wonderful. What books do you enjoy reading? It'll have a conversation, and the students can also ask questions. So again, this space is in a safe place, and you as the teacher have access to whatever it is that the students have responded. And for them, when they join, they just scan a QR code, or you could share a link with them, and they just put their name in. But again, I always just have them put their initials because I know who they are. But it is engaging. For my students that did this, we've been doing this in Spanish 1 and Spanish 2 and Spanish 3, and also in my STEAM class. And for them to like practice the language and type in Spanish and get the feedback, it's a little bit different than me standing there and giving them the feedback. Like they're in some cases, they're always on their phones anyway. So I give them a little bit of time to do this, and then I'm able to see what their responses are. And then that helps me to better help them. So that is school AI. So that definitely boosts some engagement and interest. And in the process, AI, we need to really teach students how to use it in safe, ethical, responsible ways, and to not be a replacement for them for their own learning, like having it do the work for them, but to be, in a collaborative kind of fashion, like some of us are using different AI tools to help us with the work that we do, for students to have these conversations. And you can create your own custom space as well based on what you're teaching, and really prompt it to tell it what to do. And it does not take that much time at all. Or you can try some of the ones that are available. It even has assistants that you can use. For Common Core expert, you need a field trip coordinator. Like they keep adding more and more things. And so there is that. And then the last one that I'm going to share with you, because I think it's a lot of fun, is called Snorkel. And Snorkel is basically, imagine that you have your device, your students, maybe they have a phone, an iPad, a computer, it doesn't matter. And they are going to record their thinking, their problem solving, whatever it is that you're asking them to do. And they're going to record their voice and talk through it and explain it. They can draw on the digital whiteboard space. And I did put this in the link into the document. But then what happens, depending on if you choose to have it give automated AI feedback, or you can approve it first. It records them. And then here's an example of what it does. It analyzes what they were doing. So this one was, not based on Spanish, but I did some with my Spanish students, and they were like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Can we do that again? Because they were able to record their voice, and then they got feedback, and it said, okay, well, you're using these verbs. Remember that when you use these types of verbs, you have to put this first. Can you try that? Can you give that a try? Can you give it another example of that? And so when you do this, and I'll open this up really quickly here, potentially really quickly, because I know we have a few minutes, but the setting up the prompt is really, really easy to do. And you just basically tell it, and I'll hide the student names here. There we go. So when my students did this, I mean, I didn't have a student named Crimson Cheetah, but I can open it, I can play through it, I will see the transcript. I had write 5 sentences about your daily routine, but imagine whatever you teach, you give them a math problem and you want them to solve it, record the solving of it, and talk through it. Then the AI, based on how you prompted it, will answer. It's like, great start, you use this, but remember, and then you as the teacher can also then give them feedback as well. And it timestamps where you give the feedback too, if you're listening to it and you pause and you type it in. But it's just another option, especially with all of the AI that we're surrounded by, to get students to understand like how it can be used to help them in a way that it's not doing the work for them, but it's looking at and giving them feedback like we give them feedback. So that is one that I always like sharing as well. And so the last 2 things that I'll share with you are, there is a link to the document. I put in there a new resource to explore. If you haven't heard of Teach Aid, if you're looking for more about AI, because there were the responses, everybody was like, some AI things. So I'm glad that I had some of those things in there. There are some other things that you can do with generative art, like Padlet with the I Can't Draw feature, and Adobe Firefly. There are some others that I have listed in here as well. But this Teach AI, it helps you to create some lesson plans, a lot of different things that you can do with your, oh, I just looked at that link there. A lot of different things that you can do with using this to help you with your teaching process. But this is the document. There's the code, there's EduAid, a couple other ones I didn't get to, but that's okay. The Snorkel app, and then I have the augmented virtual reality. This first one is the code to use with the promo. I would use that one first, just because that's a newer one with more of the updates. I have some ideas. I have the links for the Merge Cube, the free trial. I didn't get to talk about Nearpod, but I think a lot of people know and use Nearpod, but a lot of great lessons there. And I have some other tools as well. And then the scavenger hunt with some different ideas. And then at the end, I included some different upcoming events that I have and that I'm part of or that I know about, some of which are free. This one is a free summer PD, which is pretty cool. So if you want to learn about robot mini golf, microbits, and some AI, you can sign up for that. That is available. Some other AI sessions. So that's one thing. And then I do put out a newsletter twice a month, and I share. So if you have something that you're doing and you want me to share my newsletter, please send it my way. But my recent one came out. So if you sign up for it, you'll see some free learning events. There's the one for today. And I try to find some other things that are of interest for free, of course, that new resource I shared there. And then some other AI resources, some podcasts and some blogs on different topics. So and then just some other information, and that I am looking for some guest blog posts. So lots of ways to connect with me. Free is awesome. I know that is absolutely right. And I will tell you that I am, and it was on this other one, I'm doing 2, it's for the Nevada superintendents. They are these two here, they're happening this summer. And I think the days are 7.5 hours. It's virtual, which is a long day, but they are available and you can sign up for them. And the cost is not very high at all. I want to say it might be between $35 and $50 for the day for each of those events. So it's a full day of AI in July, and then a full day of a lot of different things in August. But the Future Ready one in June, and this summer PD also is available for free. So All of those are in that document. My contact information is in the document as well. And so with that, I thank you for joining in today. Free is worth it. And I hope that you found some new ideas. And if I can answer any questions for you, let me know. Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah, it's I have done 6-hour, 7-hour AI sessions, and one recent one, I had 200 educators, most of which were elementary teachers, and many of them were worried and said that they really didn't see how they could bring any AI into the classroom. And after that, they felt very, very relieved about it. And so there's a lot of little things. And so if you have questions, definitely reach out. I'd be happy to share some ideas with you because that is one of my favorite topics to talk about. So thank you. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day, evening, weekend. And thank you, Dr. Alexander, for the opportunity.
Thank you. I so appreciate all the resources and I love learning why to use them, but then also like going into them and seeing them is always super, super helpful. And someone put on the evaluation, I'm glad I don't only have to do worksheets now at the end of the year, and I can actually do something that's engaging, that they're still learning from. So
Right.
this was the perfect session at the perfect time. So
Well, thank you.
thank you so, so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to everybody for the comments and for the survey. And don't forget it, the books, like free books. You got summer's coming up, and I can tell you that the books are easy reads. Like you don't have to read from cover to cover. You can just pick up a story, and who knows, you might find something written by somebody else besides me that's been talking during this session. Just saying.